Light erupted from Sora's body in waves that swept through the corridor like the tide of an ocean made of fire. The Khazari warriors at the front of the charge did not even have time to scream before they were lifted from their feet and thrown backward into their comrades. But they were not dead. Sora could have killed them with a thought, could have reduced them to ash the way she had destroyed Rexon's guards before. But the power flowing through her now demanded something different. Hana and Bile were not weapons of destruction. They were instruments of protection. And Sora found that she could not bring herself to slaughter creatures who were only following orders, even if those orders would have led to her death. "Stand down," she commanded. And her voice echoed with harmonics that bypassed ears and struck directly at the mind. "This battle is over." The Khazari warriors hesitated, looking to their war chief for guidance. But Rexon had no intention of surrendering. He pushed through his own soldiers, his massive claws extended, his mouth open in a roar of pure hatred. "You are still just human," he screamed. One human woman playing with power she does not understand. He lunged at her with speed that would have been lethal seconds ago. Sora caught his claw in her bare hand. The war chief's eyes went wide with shock as he struggled to pull free and failed. "I understand perfectly," Sora said. "My father understood too, which is why he never used Hana as a weapon. He knew that the precursors did not create weapons. They created children. Release me. Not until you hear what I have to say." She could feel Rexon's fear now, could sense the terror beneath his rage. And she realized something that changed everything. He was afraid of death. "You killed my father because you were afraid of what he represented," Sora continued. "A human who had bonded with something beyond your comprehension. A human who proved that power could come from compassion instead of cruelty. Your father was a fool. My father was a gardener. Just like the precursors before him. He found something fragile, and he chose to nurture it instead of exploit it." She released Rexon's claw and stepped back. And the war chief stumbled as he regained his balance. "This is your one chance," Sora said. "Take your fleet and leave human space. Never return. And I will let you live." Rexon's face contorted with fury. "You offer mercy to the one who killed your father? I offer you more than you deserve, because my children have taught me something your species never learned. That power without compassion is just cruelty wearing armor." For a moment, it seemed like Rexon might actually accept. Then his hand moved to his belt. And Sora felt the bomb before he even activated it. A device designed to destroy everything within 100 kilometers. Enough to vaporize the command ship and most of the human fleet fighting outside. "If I cannot have victory," Rexon snarled, "then no one will have anything." He pressed the activation switch. The bomb's countdown began. Sora had perhaps 30 seconds to make a choice. She could escape, could grab her soldiers and flee through the shuttle bay. While the Khazari ship tore itself apart, she could save herself and her children. But the human fleet outside would be caught in the blast. Thousands of soldiers who had come to fight for humanity's survival. She could not let them die, Mother. Hana whispered in her mind. "What are you going to do?" "What I have to do." She reached out with the power that flowed through her, wrapped herself around the bomb like a cocoon of light. And she pulled. The explosion detonated within her embrace pain, beyond anything she had experienced during the bonding tour through her body. And for a moment Sora was certain she would die, but Hana and Bile were with her, lending their strength to hers. And together the three of them contained the blast. They could not stop it entirely, so they transformed it. The energy that should have killed thousands became light instead of fire, spreading outward in a wave that passed harmlessly through hull and flesh. From outside, the Dominion's wrath seemed to bloom like a flower of pure radiance, a beacon visible across the entire solar system. And in that moment of impossible beauty, the battle stopped. Khazari warriors throughout the ship fell to their knees as the light washed over them. Not because they were forced to, but because something in the radiance spoke to them of a universe where war was not the only option. Even Vriegsen, caught at the center of the explosion he had created, stood frozen as the light touched his ancient hatred and found something beneath it that had been buried for centuries. Grief. He had lost someone once, long ago, and he had covered that loss with rage until he forgot what had started it. The light reminded him, and for the first time in his long life, the war chief of the Kasari Dominion wept when the radiance finally faded. Sora stood alone in a corridor of enemies who no longer wanted to fight. "Go home," she said, and her voice was gentle now, tired but unbroken. "Go home and tell your people what you saw. Tell them that humanity offered you mercy when they could have offered death. And ask yourselves if war is really what you want." Vriegsen looked at her with eyes that held something new. Not fear anymore, but something approaching understanding. "What are you?" he asked again, but this time the question held wonder instead of hatred. "I am a mother," Sora repeated. "I am a soldier, and a daughter, and a guardian. And I am exactly what humanity has always been, complicated and contradictory, and capable of terrible violence and incredible kindness." She smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like her father. "We are the species that learned to make fire, and then used it to keep each other warm. We are the species that invented weapons, and then wrote laws to limit their use. And we are the species that will reach out our hands to alien children and call them family. You are strange creatures." Vriegsen said, "We know." The war chief turned and walked away, and his army followed him. The Battle of Europa was over 3 months later. Sora stood on a memorial station above Vara 7, in the same room where her mother had died, but she was not alone. 2 lights danced around her, playing in the dim space like children exploring a new garden. Hana and Bile had grown stronger since the battle, their consciousness more coherent. Their presence in Sora's mind, a constant warmth that she could not imagine living without. She held her father's pistol in her hands, the weapon that had started everything, and she spoke to the air as if he could hear her. "I understand now," she said. "I understand why you kept Hana secret, why you died rather than surrender. And I understand why you believed in me." His words echoed in her memory, carried now by 2 ancient voices that had loved him too. "She is the one. Nothing can stop her." "You were right about one thing," Sora continued. "Nothing can stop me. But you were wrong about another." "What was he wrong about, Mother?" Bile asked. "He said she, but he should have said we because I am not alone anymore." "And neither are you." She placed the pistol back in its case and closed the lid. The war was not truly over. There would be politics and negotiations and probably more conflicts in the future. But for now, humanity had proven something that the galaxy would not soon forget. They were a species that could be trusted with power. They were a species that chose love over hate, and they were a species that would always reach out their hands to children in need. Sora walked to the window and looked down at the planet where her father had died, and 2 civilizations had nearly destroyed each other. Someday, that world would bloom again. Someday the scars would heal, and when that day came, she would bring her children to see it. "We are the ones," she thought, and felt Hana and Bile echo the words back to her with joy. "Nothing can stop us." The corridors of the Dominion's wrath trembled with explosions as the battle outside reached its peak, and Sora led her surviving soldiers toward the extraction point with 2 precursor children wrapped around her consciousness like armor made of light. Bile was weak from years of torture, barely able to maintain coherent thought, and Hana poured strength into the smaller fragment while Sora provided the anchor they both needed. "We are almost there," Hana whispered in her mind. "The shuttle bay is close." But when they turned the final corner, Vriegsen was waiting for them. The war chief stood at the center of a corridor packed with Kasari warriors. Hundreds of them, more than Sora's team could possibly fight behind him. The doors to the shuttle bay were sealed and guarded. "Did you think I would let you escape?" Riekson asked, and his scarred face twisted with cruel amusement. "Did you think you could steal my weapon and simply walk away?" Sora raised her pistol, but she knew the numbers were against her. Her team had dwindled to 12 soldiers. All of them wounded, all of them exhausted. "I offer you a choice," Riekson continued. "Surrender the fragments, and I will let you live. Refuse, and I will kill everyone here and take them anyway. They are not weapons. They are children. They are power," the war chief snarled. "Power that belongs to the Dominion. Power that your father stole from us when he raided that vault. He did not steal anything. He protected someone who needed protection. And look where that protection got him." Sora's finger tightened on the trigger. But before she could fire, Hana's voice filled her mind with urgent emotion. "Wait, please. There is something you need to see first. This is not the time. It is exactly the time. You need to understand why your father did what he did. Why he chose to die rather than surrender me." Images flooded Sora's consciousness. Memories that were not her own. She saw through Hana's eyes as soldiers broke into the precursor vault. Saw weapons raised and harsh voices demanding surrender. And she saw her father step forward with his hands open and his face calm. "Lower your weapons," he said to his own men. "We are not here to conquer." The other soldiers protested. But Taejin walked past them and knelt beside the crystal fragments huddled in the corner of the vault. "I know you are afraid," he said softly. "I know you have been alone for a very long time. But I am not going to hurt you." The fragments trembled with ancient fear. "My name is Taejin, and I have a daughter named Sora. She is only 5 years old, but she is the bravest person I have ever known." "Why are you telling us this?" The younger fragment asked. "Because I want you to know that kindness exists. That not everyone in this universe wants to use you or hurt you. And I want you to meet her someday." He held out his hand. And after a long moment, Hana reached toward him. The bond formed in an instant. And in that moment, Taejin became the first human in history to connect with a precursor consciousness. He gasped as Hana's mind touched his. And tears streamed down his face. "You are beautiful," he whispered. "You are so beautiful, and I am so sorry you have been alone." The memory faded. And Sora found herself back in the corridor with tears on her own cheeks and Rexon's army waiting to destroy her. "Your father was weak," the war chief said. "Sentiment made him vulnerable. Sentiment made him strong. Then prove it. Fight me. Defeat my army. Show me that human kindness is worth anything against Kasari power." Sora looked at the impossible odds before her, and she felt Bile's terrified presence clinging to her mind. "I cannot go back," the young fragment whimpered. "Please do not let them take me back. I will not let that happen. But how can you stop them?" "You are just one person," Sora considered the question. And in that moment she understood what her father had known all along. The precursor fragments were not weapons to be wielded. They were children to be loved, and love was not passive, Hana. She thought, if I bond with Bile as well, what happens? Silence from the fragment, then hesitant concern. No human has ever bonded with two of us. The energy required might kill you, and if I do not try, then Bile will be enslaved again, and eventually they will find me too. And everything your father died for will mean nothing. Sora looked at her soldiers, at their frightened faces and their steady hands, and she made her choice. "Get behind me," she ordered. "Commander? All of you, get behind me now." They obeyed without further question, and Sora holstered her pistol. Riekson laughed. "You surrender?" "No," Sora said, and she opened her arms wide. "I embrace." She reached out with her mind toward Bile, toward the frightened child who had been tortured for years. And she offered everything she had, her strength, her courage, her love. Her life if necessary. Bile hesitated. You would die for me? I would die for both of you. But you do not even know me. I know that you are scared and alone and desperate for someone to care. And that is enough. The fragment reached back, and the bond formed in fire and light. Pain exploded through Sora's body. Pain beyond anything she had ever experienced. Two consciousnesses merged with hers simultaneously. Two ancient minds pouring into her human form. And every cell in her body screamed with the strain. She felt herself burning from the inside. Felt her heart stutter and her lungs seize. This is too much. Hannah cried. We are killing her. No, Bile answered. And there was wonder in the fragment's voice. No, look at her. She's not dying. She is transforming. The pain did not stop. But Sora stopped fighting it. She let it flow through her and around her and beyond her. And in the midst of the agony, she found something else. Connection. Not just with Hannah and Bile, but with everything they had ever been. Millions of years of memory and hope and loss and love. The precursors had not been conquerors. They had been gardeners. Tending the galaxy, nurturing young species toward wisdom, and when their time ended, they scattered their children among the stars to wait for civilizations kind enough to raise them. You were waiting for us. Sora whispered, we were waiting for someone like you. Hannah answered, we were waiting for someone like your father. Bile added, and now you have found us. The light reached its peak. And Sora opened her eyes. The pain was gone. In its place was power beyond comprehension. The combined strength of two ancient minds, channeled through a human form. Riekson stared at her with something new in his eyes. Fear. What are you? He demanded. Sora smiled, and her voice carried harmonics that were not entirely human. I am a mother, she said. And you threaten my children. Riekson roared and charged. And his army followed, but Sora was no longer just one person. She was three minds united in love, and nothing could stop her. The Battle of Europa raged across the space above Jupiter's frozen moon. And Commander Yeon Sora watched from the bridge of her assault shuttle as human ships died in flashes of fire and light. The Khazari fleet had come in force. 300 warships arranged in formations that spoke of absolute confidence. And at their center flew the command vessel that carried the weapon. Humanity feared. The Dominion's wrath was a monster of metal and malice, larger than any human station. And somewhere in its depths a precursor child screamed in endless pain. All teams ready? Sora announced over the tactical channel. We board on my mark. At her hip, the pistol pulsed with warmth. And in her mind, Hannah's presence burned with determination. The Khazari expect us to fight their fleet. Hannah whispered without words. They do not expect us to come for their weapon. That is why we will succeed. The assault shuttle punched through the Dominion's Wrath's outer defenses, while human fighters drew the enemy's attention. And Sora led 30 soldiers through the breach with her father's pistol raised and ready. The interior of the Khazari ship was built for giants, and the corridors stretched high above human heads like canyons of dark metal. Khazari warriors waited for them. The first wave came screaming around a corner. 3 meters of chitin armor and clawed hands and mouths filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. Sora fired light erupted from her pistol. Not plasma, but something purer, and the lead warrior dissolved into ash before he could complete his charge. The soldiers behind her opened fire with conventional weapons, and the corridor became a storm of energy and blood. Push forward, Sora ordered. And her team advanced through the chaos while she cleared the path ahead. Hannah guided her aim, showing her where to fire before enemies even appeared. And together they cut through opposition that should have overwhelmed them. But the deeper they went, the stronger the resistance became. Commander, one of her sergeants called out. We have lost contact with teams 2 and 3. Keep moving. We cannot stop now. They fought through corridors that seemed endless, past chambers filled with technology that defied understanding. And always the screaming in subspace grew louder. Sora could feel Hannah's distress growing with every step. Could feel the fragment's grief for its sibling's suffering. And then they entered a great hall. And everything changed. The chamber was circular and vast, with walls that rose into darkness and a floor marked with symbols older than humanity. In the center stood a Kazari, unlike any Sora had ever seen. He was massive even by his species standards, covered in scars that told stories of 1,000 battles. And his eyes burned with hatred that had been nursed across years of defeat. "I know you," he said, and his voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "I can smell him on you." The stink of Kaijin's bloodline. Sora raised her pistol and felt Hana's rage mirror her own. "Who are you?" "I am Vrixen, war chief of the Dominion, and I killed your father on the surface of Vera 7. The words struck Sora like a physical blow, and memories crashed through her mind. Her father's smile, his voice, his absence that had shaped her entire life. "You," he begged, Vrixen continued, and his mouth twisted into something horrible that might have been a smile. Not for his own life, but for his family, for the woman he loved and the daughter he would never see again. "Stop talking. He died on his knees, weeping for you." And I laughed while his blood soaked into the dirt. Sora screamed and fired light blaze from her pistol in a torrent of fury. And Vrixen's elite guards evaporated where they stood, but the war chief himself moved with speed that should have been impossible for his size, dodging the blast and retreating through a doorway behind him. "Come find me when you are ready to die like he did," Vrixen called back. And then he was gone. Sora wanted to chase him, wanted to hunt him through the ship and make him pay for every word he had spoken. But Hannah's voice cut through her rage with desperate urgency. "My sibling is close. I can feel them, please. We must help them first." The anger did not fade, but Sora forced it down and turned away from the door where her father's killer had vanished. "Lead me to them," through corridors that twisted like intestines, past guards that fell before they could raise their weapons, until they reached a chamber sealed with locks that would have stopped any human technology. Hana sang a frequency that made the locks dissolve like ice in sunlight, and the door opened onto horror. The room was a torture chamber. The precursor fragment hung suspended in a cage of energy fields, surrounded by machines that pulsed with rhythms designed to cause maximum pain. It was smaller than Hana, dimmer, and its light flickered like a candle in a storm, and it was screaming, not across subspace anymore, but here, in this room. A sound of suffering so pure that Sora's soldiers fell back with their hands over their ears. But Sora walked forward. She walked into the screaming and let it wash over her without flinching. And she reached out her hand toward the cage. "I am here," she said, and her voice was steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "I am here to help you." The screaming stopped. The fragment turned its attention toward her, and Sora felt its mind touch hers, broken, terrified, unable to trust but desperate to believe. "Who are you?" "My name is Sora, and I carry your sibling Hana, and we have come to free you. They will hurt me again." "They always hurt me, not anymore. You cannot promise that. You are just one small creature." Sora holstered her pistol and placed both hands against the energy cage, and she let the fragment see everything in her heart. Her grief for her father, her love for Hana, her determination to save this child no matter the cost. "I promise," she said. "On my father's memory, on everything I am. I promise that I will die before I let anyone hurt you again." The fragment was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke a word that Sora did not understand. A word in a language older than stars. Hana translated it for her, and the meaning made Sora's heart crack open. "Mother." "No," Sora whispered. "I am not your mother." The fragment reached toward her through the cage, and its light grew slightly brighter. "You are like him, like the one who was kind to my sibling. You speak to us like we matter, like we are real. You are real. You are precious. And you deserve better than this cage. Then please help me. Sora looked at the machines surrounding the cage, at the technology designed to cause pain, and she raised her pistol again. Hana, can we destroy this without hurting them? No, the machines are connected to my sibling. But I can teach you how to deactivate them if you let me guide your hands. Then guide me. For the next hour, Sora worked in silence, following Hana's instructions to disable torture devices, one by one, while her soldiers guarded the door against Kisari counterattacks, and with each device that went dark, the fragment's light grew stronger. Finally, the cage itself dissolved, and the precursor child floated free for the first time since its enslavement. It drifted towards Sora with hesitant wonder, and when it touched her mind, she felt something she had not expected. It felt like coming home. Do you have a name? Sora asked. The fragment flickered with something that might have been shame. They called me weapon. They called me tool. They called me slave. Those are not names. Those are insults, and you deserve better. Then give me better. You said you would protect me, so give me a name worth protecting. Sora thought of her father, of the way he had named Hana after a flower, and she looked at the light dancing within this broken child. Bile, she said. I will call you Bile, which means star, because even in darkness you shine. The fragment pulsed with joy that filled the room with warmth. Bile. I am Bile, and you are my mother now? Sora did not argue. She simply opened her arms, and two fragments of ancient light embraced her while the battle raged outside. She had found what she came for. Now she had to get them home. Research Station Prometheus hid in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, buried so deep in rock and shadow that even most Earth Defense Corps officers did not know it existed. Sora had learned of it only because her rank granted her access to secrets that others never saw. And now she walked its metal corridors with her father's pistol heavy at her hip. Dr. Chai Yunji waited for her in a laboratory filled with weapons and machines that hummed with quiet power. Yunji was old now, her hair white and her face lined with decades of work. But her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was still the finest in the course. She had been Yan Tejun's closest friend. And when she saw the pistol in Sora's hand, her face went pale. Where did you get that? She demanded. And her voice held fear that Sora had never heard from her before. My mother gave it to me before she died. She said my father wanted me to have it. Taejin, you fool, Yunji whispered. And she sank into a chair as if her legs could no longer hold her weight. You absolute fool. I told you to destroy it. Destroy what? Doctor, what is this weapon? Yunji looked at the pistol for a long moment before she answered. During the first HFY War, a team of soldiers discovered something on Varith 7, a vault buried deep beneath the surface. And inside they found technology that should not have existed. Precursor artifacts, Sora said. Not just artifacts. Commander, they found fragments of crystal that pulse with energy we could not measure, that responded to thoughts and emotions, that seemed almost alive. My father was part of that team. He was their leader, Yunji confirmed. And when the military wanted to take the fragments for study, to dissect them and unlock their secrets, Taejin refused to cooperate. Why? The old scientist met Sora's eyes with an expression of mingled sorrow and wonder, because he believed the fragments were not weapons or tools. He believed they were children. The word hung in the air between them. Impossible and yet somehow true, children, Sora repeated. Consciousness without form. Minds without bodies. The last survivors of a civilization dead for millions of years. And your father was the first person in all that time to speak to them with kindness. Yunji stood and walked to a console that displayed data streams in colors. Sora could not interpret the fragment bonded to him because he treated it like a living thing, because he gave it a name and talked to it and cared for its well-being. And in return it gave him power beyond anything we could have achieved with ordinary technology. What name did he give it? Hana, Inji said softly. He called it Hana, which means flower in our old language, and he said it was like a seed that had been waiting for someone to help it grow. Sora drew the pistol and looked at it with new eyes, seeing not a weapon but a cradle, not steel and crystal, but a sleeping child waiting to wake. Why did he keep it secret? Because he knew what would happen if the military discovered what he had. They would take it from him. They would study it and test it, and eventually they would hurt it trying to understand it. So he hid it in his weapon. He bonded it to his pistol, because that was the one thing no soldier could be forced to surrender. And he carried it through every battle, protecting it while it protected him. Sora raised the pistol and aimed at a target on the far wall. And she pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. The weapon remained silent in her hand. Its crystal core dim and unresponsive. It will not fire, she said. Of course not, Yunji replied. Precursor technology does not respond to commands. It responds to connection. And Hana has not chosen you yet. How did my father earn its trust? By being himself, by speaking to it honestly, by offering friendship without expecting anything in return. And that is something I cannot teach you. Before Sora could respond, the laboratory door burst open and a young officer rushed in with panic written across his face. Commander, you need to see this. We are receiving a transmission on subspace frequencies. Yunji's console flickered and changed, displaying a waveform that pulsed with rhythms that made Sora's head ache just to look at them. What is that? She asked. That is what the Khazari call their new weapon, the officer said. Intelligence just confirmed it. They found another precursor fragment, and they did not treat it the way your father treated his. The waveform screamed. There was no other word for the sound that emerged from the speakers. A cry of pain and terror and desperate longing that cut through Sora's mind like a blade. And in her hand, the pistol trembled. Hana is responding, Unji whispered. She can hear her sibling suffering. The crystal in the pistol's core pulsed with light that Sora had never seen before. And she felt something stir in her mind. Not words but emotions. Not thoughts but impressions, fear and grief and desperate hope. The Khazari enslaved a child, Sora said. And anger burned in her chest like fire. They tortured it until it obeyed, Yunji confirmed. And now they are bringing it to Earth to use as a weapon against us. When? The fleet entered human space 3 hours ago. The Council has ordered us to surrender all precursor technology in exchange for peace. Sora looked down at the pistol in her hand, at the crystal that held a mind her father had loved. And she made a decision that would change everything. We are not surrendering anything. Commander, you cannot fight a fleet alone. I am not alone, Sora said. And she spoke not to Yunji, but to the weapon, to the sleeping consciousness within it. I am not alone. And neither is the child they have enslaved. She raised the pistol and spoke to it directly. Not as a soldier addressing a tool, but as a daughter speaking to her father's legacy. I know you do not know me yet, and I know you have no reason to trust me. But my father believed in you. He died protecting you. And now I am asking you to believe in me. The crystal's light flickered and danced. I am not asking you to be my weapon. I am asking you to be my partner, the way you were his partner. And together we will save your sibling from the monsters who are hurting them. For a long moment, nothing happened. And Sora began to fear that she had failed. Then warmth spread through her hand. Warmth that traveled up her arm and filled her chest. And she felt a presence touch her mind with gentle curiosity. It was like being seen for the first time, truly seen. Not as a commander or a soldier or a daughter, but as herself. The presence examined her memories and her hopes and her fears. And it lingered longest on her grief for her father. On the love she still carried for a man she would never see again. And then it spoke, not in words. Not in any language Sora knew, but in pure emotion that translated itself directly into meaning. I remember me. You remember me? Your father showed me images of you. He talked about you every day. He loved you more than anything in all the stars." Tears streamed down Sora's face, and she did not bother to wipe them away. "Will you help me?" The presence that called itself Hana wrapped around her mind like an embrace from someone she had never met, but somehow always known. "He said you were the one. He said nothing could stop you, and I believe him." The pistol blazed with light, and Sora felt power surge through her body like lightning through a storm. "Then let us go save your sibling," she said, and Hana answered with a single emotion that needed no translation. "Yes." The message arrived at midnight, and Commander Yeon Sora read it 3 times before she believed the words on her screen. Her mother was dying. 7 years had passed since Sora last spoke to Park Minji, and in all that time she had convinced herself that the silence was necessary, that the distance protected them both from memories too painful to share. But now her shuttle cut through the darkness of space toward the memorial station above Vara 7, and every kilometer brought her closer to a woman she had abandoned and a father whose ghost still haunted her dreams. The station hung in orbit like a metal flower, its arms reaching toward the scarred planet below where 10,000 human soldiers had died fighting the Kesari Dominion. Yeon Taejun had been one of them. Sora docked her shuttle and walked through corridors filled with memorial plaques and holographic images of the fallen. And she kept her eyes forward because she knew that if she looked too closely, she would see her father's face among them. The medical bay was quiet and dim, and her mother lay on a bed that seemed too large for her frail body. Park Minji had always been a strong woman, a woman who raised her daughter alone during the long deployments, a woman who never cried, even when the officers came to deliver the news that would break lesser people. Now she looked small and tired and old. "You came," Minji whispered, and her voice cracked like dry paper. "You asked me to come," Sora replied, and she stood at the foot of the bed because she did not know how to bridge the distance between them. "I asked you many times before, and you never answered." The accusation was gentle but true, and Sora had no defense against it. She had run from her grief by throwing herself into the military, climbing the ranks of the Earth Defense Corps until she commanded her own ship and her own crew. And somewhere along the way she had forgotten how to be a daughter. "I'm sorry," Sora said. And the words felt inadequate for 7 years of silence. Minji smiled, and even now her smile held warmth that Sora did not deserve. "I did not call you here for apologies, child. I called you here because your father left something for you, and it is time you received it." From beneath her blanket, Minji produced a metal case worn smooth by years of handling, and she held it out with hands that trembled from weakness. Sora took the case and felt its weight, heavier than she expected. And when she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside lay a pistol. It was a Valkyrie-class plasma weapon, but unlike any Valkyrie she had ever seen. And its surface was covered in scars and burns and modifications that spoke of battles. Beyond counting, the grip was wrapped in leather that had been worn soft by her father's hand, and she could almost feel his presence in the warmth of the metal. "This was his," Sora whispered. "He called her his partner," Minji said, and she used the word her as if speaking of a living thing. "He talked to her like she could hear him, and I thought he was strange for it, but he always said she understood." Sora lifted the pistol from its case and held it in her hand, and it fit perfectly as if it had been made for her. "Why did you keep this from me?" "Because he told me to wait," Minji answered. "His last transmission before he died was not goodbye to us, Sora. It was instructions. And he said to give you this weapon only when you were ready to understand what it meant. I do not understand. Neither did I. Not for many years, but he said something else that I remember word for word. And I have repeated it every night before sleep so I would not forget." Minji closed her eyes and spoke in a voice that carried the echo of a dead man's conviction. He said, She's the one. Nothing can stop her. The words hung in the air between them, and Sora did not know if her father had been speaking of the weapon or of her, before she could ask. The door to the medical bay opened, and a tall figure entered with the smooth grace of diplomatic training. The visitor was Dishan, his blue skin marked with the silver patterns of high office, and his eyes held the calm patience of a species that measured time in centuries. "Commander Yan," he said, and his voice carried the musical quality common to his kind. "I am Orvith, representative of the Galactic Council, and I apologize for interrupting this moment. But I bring news that cannot wait." "What news?" "The Khazari Dominion has returned." The word struck Sora like a physical blow, and she remembered the stories her father had told her about the enemy who had nearly destroyed humanity. The species of towering warriors who conquered without mercy and ruled through terror. "That is impossible," she said. "We broke their fleet at the Battle of Vara 7. You delayed them," Orvith corrected gently. "For 15 years they rebuilt and recovered. And now they have a new weapon, something terrible. Something that screams across subspace frequencies like a wounded animal." "What weapon?" "We do not know, but we know it is powerful enough to make the Council afraid. And when the Council is afraid, they seek peace at any cost." Sora understood what he was not saying. They want humanity to surrender. They want humanity to negotiate, Orvith said, to offer concessions in exchange for safety, to give the Khazari whatever they demand rather than risk another war. "And what do the Khazari demand?" The Deshan's eyes moved to the pistol in Sora's hand, and something flickered in their depths that might have been recognition or might have been hope. "I do not know yet," he said, "but I suspect you will learn soon enough." He bowed with formal grace and left the room, and Sora stood holding her father's weapon while questions burned in her mind. "Mother," she said, "what is this pistol, truly?" But when she turned, she saw that Minji's eyes had closed, and her chest no longer rose with breath. Park Minji had held on just long enough to complete her mission, to pass the inheritance from father to daughter. And now she was gone. Sora stood alone in the dim medical bay with a dead mother and a mysterious weapon. And grief washed over her in waves that threatened to pull her under. She had wasted 7 years running from loss, and now she had lost everything that remained hours later. Sitting in her shovel with the pistol disassembled on the table before her, Sora discovered something that changed everything. The weapon's power core did not contain standard plasma cells. Instead, it held a fragment of crystal that pulsed with soft light, a material that no human technology had ever produced, a substance that her training told her should not exist. It was precursor technology. The precursors were legends, a civilization that had vanished millions of years before humanity first looked at the stars, and their artifacts were so rare that entire wars had been fought over single fragments. Her father had carried one in his pistol for years, had bonded it to his weapon, and kept it secret from everyone, except perhaps her mother. And now it belonged to Sora. She held the crystal up to the light and watched colors dance within its depths, and she could have sworn that it pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "What are you?" she whispered to the fragment. "And what did my father know that he never told me?" The crystal offered no answers, but it grew warm in her hand, and Sora felt something stir in the depths of her mind, like a sleeper awakening from a long dream. Whatever this weapon was, whatever secrets it held, she would discover them. She owed her father that much. She owed herself that much. And if the Khazari Dominion thought they could threaten humanity again, they would learn that Yan Tajun's daughter had inherited more than his weapon. She had inherited his will to fight,